Welcome to the Fibromyalgia Podcast. I'm Tami Stacklehouse, fibromyalgia coach, author, and founder of the International Fibromyalgia Coaching Institute. The goal of this podcast is to empower you with access to the dream team of experts and coaches I've discovered are key to living the fibro life you love. From the comfort of your own home, and maybe even your pajamas, I'll help you take back control of your life and health. To help out with fibro fog, I always include full show notes and additional resources at fibromyalgiapodcast.com. Welcome to the Fibromyalgia Podcast. I'm your coach, Tami Stacklehouse, and this is episode 164. Have you ever felt like you were losing your physical independence because of your fibromyalgia? Maybe you struggle with things like going up the stairs or carrying your groceries or just getting up off the floor. If that's you, you are absolutely not alone. Every person in the world deals with this at some point. Now, for most people, this happens as we age, but for some of us, this can come early after an injury or an illness like fibromyalgia. In today's episode, I'm joined by my friend Angi McClure, and we discuss physical independence. We talk about age training, physical and mental resilience as we move through the seasons of life, plus why Angi wants to give Olympic medals to ordinary fibro patients like you and me. I loved my conversation with Angi, and I know it's going to give you hope too. Now, let me introduce you to my guest today. Angi McClure is a neuro-based movement therapist specializing in age science. Utilizing functional Chinese medicine through movement, nutrition, and seasonal lifestyle habits, Angi educates the masses on age training through her movement program called Bamboo Bodies. For 20 plus years, Angi has studied, taught, and collaborated with people who acknowledge that we need support in the aging process. After studying in New York City at Pacific College of Oriental Medicine and deepening her Qigong practice, Angi began developing a movement system based on the seasons. Bamboo Bodies truly began to cement into a brain-based practice for age training during Angi's studies in applied neurology. As a Z-Health master practitioner, Angi blends neuroscience with Qigong to improve her students' mindset and skill set around aging. And I'll just interject here that everything that I have seen from Angi, all of the work that she does on age training, 100% applies to fibromyalgia as well. So as you listen to our conversation, anytime you hear Angi talking about age training, about longevity, about aging, that could also be a substitute for fibromyalgia. So just kind of keep that in the back of your head. And I do always want to remind you that the information that we include in this podcast is never meant to be considered medical advice, and it is not intended to replace consulting with a qualified physician or other healthcare provider. So anything you hear in this episode, take it to your providers and talk to them about what's right for you. Now, as you listen to my conversation with Angi, you'll hear us discussing several resources. You will be able to find those in today's show notes at fibromyalgiapodcast.com/164. I'll also share some additional information on those resources after the interview. So be sure and hang on when our conversation is over for all those extra details. Now, here's my conversation with Angi McClure. Hi, Angi. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Tami. Thank you.
So I would love to start, and I actually don't know if I ever knew this or if I'm about to learn something new or if I just forgot, but how did you get into doing this work? What led you down the path into age training?
Well, it probably started long, long ago when I realized I really like hanging out with people who are 20, 40, 70 years my senior. That probably is a good start for it, is hanging out with those who taught me, gave me stories, gave me lessons. I'm the type of person who likes to learn. So if you've got something to teach me, I'll listen. So it started probably genuinely through friendships. I think in your 20s, when you're friends with people who are going through perimenopause, postmenopause, going through cancer diagnoses, life, you learn a lot in your young years where you think you're invincible and the world is always going to be this way. And so I think I was given a realistic look at life at a young age, being in my 20s. And it was there when I was in school studying Chinese medicine, studying movement therapy, and I was teaching at gyms in New York City. And for many people, when they look at their life path and what led them, I genuinely think I have always had an admiration for being with people older than me. And so teaching group fit, I was teaching senior classes. I genuinely enjoyed it. And it was there in seeing the movement that we were missing for the aging population. And let's just generalize aging population in reality is about 35 and onward. And we're not nurturing people with where they're at, whether that is with an inability or with a change. And we're not teaching people how to adapt in these lifestyle changes. And so through my friendships, through some very wise people, and through my passion in wanting to understand more about aging well, it pieced so well with Chinese medicine because longevity is a key component, but it also genuinely is about adaptation and adaptation through the seasons that we experience, through our own internal seasons as we go from, spring to our winter years. There's a lot to learn. And so my background comes from the studies that I have and will always forever continue to lean into, as well as from my experiences. And now, 20 years later, I'm getting to experience those changes that I was anticipating. And so coming at it from a more personal perspective too, I think that is changing and shifting how I am working and looking at educating those who simply are interested in wanting to learn how to age well in the bodies that we have, and also understanding that time creates change. And so learning how to adapt without having to break the bank, without having to become some fitness athlete, and certainly without having to feel like we have to turn back time. There is no anti-age. Instead, it's about pro-aging. And I think as our bodies teach us and give us stories, we can find wisdom within that. And I think that is truly celebrated in what I do.
I would agree with that. And this idea of adapting is such an important one. As you were talking about aging, but like substitute the word fibromyalgia in there or any other sort of illness or injury or condition or whatever, right? Like our lives change. And I think this is one of the things I run into so often with my clients is they want to go back and capture who they used to be. But in many cases, like you said, you can't turn back the clock. You're never going to go back and be what you were like in your 20s, ever, fibromyalgia or not.
Yeah.
And so I think sometimes we need a little bit of that reality check. But it also seems like, and you touched on this, that either we aren't functional, we don't have that physical independence, or we're like some sort of super athlete. And the normal person, I think, well, speaking it for myself as a normal person, sometimes it feels like that is out of reach a little bit, or I'd have to spend a lot of my time or energy or whatever. And it's hard. How do you fit it all in, right?
So that is a passion point for me in Bamboo Bodies as we're talking about normal people, someone like you and me, people who are not athletes, and recognizing athletes are the ones that get the medals. They're the ones that get paid really big. But here you and I are living our life, and yet we're not getting the recognition, we're not getting the medals for being able to maintain some form of independence in our lives. And that, again, is where I really lean into working with people to age well, to adapt in their bodies through changes what come our way. Because many of us may not realize we are like athletes. Someone recovering from a stroke, they've done studies where they actually come into Olympian athletic type training in order for their brain to find recovery post stroke. So, with your listeners, recognizing that whether you're early in your diagnoses or you're decades in your diagnoses, the mindset shift, the adaptation, the recognition of care, recovery that is so different and important, that's had to rewire new pathways. That's you recognizing that making these changes so you can maintain independence is athletic level training. We're not going to get the reward from it, maybe not the recognition, but I want your listeners to also kind of pat themselves on the back as we're all striving. It's an ongoing hope, but we're all striving for that independence as we will always have to adapt. Tami, I think you could agree with me on this one. For someone who trains and teaches coaches for fibromyalgia, you're always still adapting. You're always still learning. Like there is no, you did it, you won the Olympics, now go sit on the couch. Like maintaining independence, like you're not done. It's a forever and always sport, if you will.
Right. And the rules keep changing and how we feel changes, life around us changes. There were changes I had to make when I moved from Portland to Seattle. There's always something to be tweaking and working on. And for those of you listening who are hearing this like training like an athlete, we're actually not talking about hitting the gym. I want to be super clear about that sometimes people with fibromyalgia here talk about exercise and things like that, training, and think, oh God, no, I can't do that. That's not actually what we're talking about. If you think about the consistency of somebody who's an athlete, the way that they show up and they're always looking to improve themselves, the way that they think. And yes, some of the way that they train too physically, that is important. But most of what we're talking about actually isn't that.
100%. And thank you for clarifying that, because that was a point that I wanted to make. And you so seamlessly bring us to that point, is emphasizing the athlete, if you will. What it is, it's resiliency. Resiliency, oh, here comes the nerd. The neurological definition of resiliency is the ability to bounce back from stress or adversity while being able to maintain psychophysiological resources. Let's calm that knowledge down to me simply saying, when stuff comes your way that's not pleasant, you're going to be able to keep your cool, figure out how to bend a little bit with it. And key theme today is being able to adapt. That's going to give you longevity. That's going to give you that independence, because when we stop bending in Chinese medicine, they say you'll break. And it's harder to fix something that's broken versus coming back from being able to shift, to move, to bend. Resiliency is what an athlete has to train mentally and emotionally, because they're going to experience discomfort and pain. They're going to experience fatigue and self-doubt. All these come into the athlete's mind, but not when they're performing. It's while they're training. They're training for resiliency. So thank you for that clarity. And I think that's for all of us to recognize too. You literally have to pay me to go into a gym. I'm a group fitness instructor. I literally get paid to go in and hang out with some of my most wonderful friends. We hang out and we chat and we laugh. And I always smile to myself thinking the community side, the support that we get from one another helps build that resiliency because we see that we're not alone. And then for me, having developed a movement course with Bamboo Bodies, yes, we do come into movement, but best way of explaining it is that it's about play, coming back into your body, being able to recognize that it's not so intense, that we're not always so gentle and connected with ourselves. And so using that as a way of reconnecting with the body helps us tap into that resiliency. And I think that's really important for many of us, whether it's chronic pain, different pathologies, however we're diagnosed, people will detach from their bodies. They get mad at their bodies. And that reconnection is going to help with that conservation. And that's going to give you literally the fuel to help you for today and tomorrow. And as I remind every single one of my clients, you're going to have good days, you're going to have bad days, you're going to have great years, you're going to have bad years. That is the ebb and flow, but that's what you're training for. That's at an athletic level that we don't think. Training my mindset for resiliency is training like an athlete. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes, yes. I mean, that's the thing that helps you do the next thing when what you just did went belly up, right? So if you're watching the Olympics and you see somebody have a bad whatever it is, right? A bad race or whatever, it's that resiliency to be able to set that aside and say, okay, now it's a new race. For us, for fibromyalgia, that might mean being able to set it aside and say, it's a new day. Yesterday didn't go as planned. It's a new day. I didn't handle that as well as I could have. It's a new opportunity to be able to set that aside and then look forward. And like you said, we sort of check out from our bodies, and checking back in is actually the answer. And that's not always so easy to do.
Yeah. And I love that you said that because for the listeners, Tami and I have known each other for a while. And when I first met Tami, the way that she explained fibromyalgia, can I do the spoon thing?
Yeah,
I'm probably going to do it
absolutely.
great. Those who know Tami, maybe you've heard this one before, but early in the day, how Tami would explain fibromyalgia is that she starts the day with a couple spoons. And just getting out of bed took 2 spoons. So now she's only got 3 more spoons in her hand. And just simply taking the shower, she's now used up the rest of her spoons, and just drying her hair would have taken another spoons, but she's out of spoons. She's done for the day. And she would say, I would then have to go rest, recover, and then realize what is my next step. And that's something that always struck me because for me, working with people as we age, and some of you, fibromyalgia or not, you guys will think, oh yeah, this all resonates because some days you will wake up with 10 spoons, but you're choosing to do a 9-spoon activity and you're left with very little. And reconnecting with the body, just as Tami said, is not only recognizing how much energy do I have and what can I expend for today, but also giving yourself that ability to know when you've got to take it easy. And I think it's so hard to have other people explain themselves to society. So that's why it was fun to have Tami explain her reality to my reality. So there's some compassion and understanding. And since we're talking athletes, that was one thing that I think taught America when Simone Biles came into her body and was like, I'm not safe, because being an athlete, not compared to fibromyalgia, but she was out of spoons and it wasn't safe for her. And Americans who understood that honored that rest and recovery. And I emphasize this over and over again, and I know Tami does as well, that recovery is very important. And recovery actually is a form of self-care. And when it comes down to the root of it, me always wanting to intermix a little bit of Chinese medicine, I just kind of think it's more the poetic side of this. But when it comes to us wanting to settle into the yin, so you got the yin and the yang being upper and high and bright and loud, and the yin being still and quiet, that recoup, that yin in Chinese medicine is where it gives shape. So the yang can move into prosperity. And I think that's a good thing to remember, is that yin gives shape. So to translate from a more Western perspective is that When you find your recovery, you're going to get your spoons back, and then you're going to have more opportunity for that activity. And so honoring where you're at, listening to the body, not pushing against it, and also having a support system. Again, we're coming back into more tools for resiliency, a more resilient community and support system. And this is where everybody, when you really come down to understanding a goal, is to be able to maintain that independence. Can I do this on my own and for myself? But I mentioned the community side, the community, the support. It's really nice to know that independence also means asking, could you help me with this as well? People love to help other people. I say that to my son all the time. Like, people want to help others, and building and enriching that community is part of longevity. Wherever we're at with however we are, it's a huge component to that longevity piece.
Yes, it is. And we weren't meant to do life on our own, which is kind of funny because we are talking about independence. But like you said, part of that independence is knowing when to ask for help. So the spoon theory, if that's new to you as you're listening, we'll include a link to that in today's show notes. That's actually from an article by Christine Miserandino, but we'll link to that for you. The other thing that I want to touch on here that you have mentioned a couple of times, but I'd love to dive a little bit deeper, is to talk about this idea of seasons. And several episodes back, we'll link this in the show notes too, but I recorded an episode about embracing life's winter season. Like, if you just think about nature, all of nature has seasons, right? And winter, the trees outside look dead, right? Your yard might look dead, whatever it is. Like, it's quiet, it's still, it's in hibernation, things look dead. And for many of you listening, your fibromyalgia season might be a winter season. Your life might look dead, but spring also comes. So I'd love for you to talk about this idea of seasons from a Chinese medicine age training sort of perspective.
Love that. So let's start at the very beginning. Spring, generally, from an internal season perspective, is from our time of birth and into our 20s. So from, let's just say, 0 to 20, and all these numbers shift because every single one of us are different and special and unique. But within the age timeline of that, that's our spring season. It's about birth, and things are new, turning over a new leaf, a lot of lessons to be learned. This is a time when things begin. Then we shift into the summer season around the ages, 20s and 30s. So from 20 to 40, this is a time of growth and expansion. And for many of us, we may see this as a time where we started a career, or we started a family, or we made big decisions that really have led us to where a large direction of our life has taken us. So there's a big aspect of growth that can happen during our 20s and 30s, give or take. What I love is looking at the shift in the autumn season. The autumn season is when most people become obstinate. And thank goodness we are starting to talk more about perimenopause, but in our 40s and 50s, something starts to change biologically, neurologically. This is a time, and just hear me when I say this, when we come into the autumn season of our internal lives, we're actually supposed to start slowing down and moving inward. Most of us don't like that, so we resist that. Us going back to that initial conversation of knowing when to be still. Think about how Simone Biles was completely ridiculed too for her decision to say no and slow down. Our society, our culture doesn't always celebrate the slow. And I don't know about you, Tami and I both being in our 40s, I swear things are speeding up, but my body is telling me go slower. And so I'm pulled in two different directions. And even within my own studies, it is a constant reminder for me to find that moment of coming into the time of what's harvesting. I can't be so abundant. I always think of the literal ideology of if anyone has any, like an apple tree, you're not going to take every single apple off of your tree and every single apple that fell. Some are going to be eaten by birds, some are going to be rotten. You're going to have too much. What are you going to do with all this? You're just going to take what's right for you. But during our 40s and 50s, we don't do that. We were never taught that. And so we take, we go, we give, and people definitely run into burnout. It does begin to affect people's health. And for those who can, they'll try and push through. For those who cannot, they feel like they're a failure. And so we hit our winter season. Let's just say around our 60s, 70s, and beyond becomes our winter season. This is one of my favorite seasons of people to work with because some people have not learned their lesson and they really want to. It's when age and life can hit you kind of hard because we can't hide behind youth anymore. The pathology is there. The illness has taken form. The habit is ingrained. And people are striving for, I played grasshopper for too long. How do you prepare me for winter now while I'm in winter? And then there's the people who enter winter and they didn't play grasshopper. They started figuring things out in their 40s. They grew that confidence, that verbiage, that self-understanding for self-preservation. And not only is there an ability through winter season, as Tami said, we think, look at the trees, they're all dead. But actually what happens is that the tree, from all the leaves as they fall off, all that nutrients comes into the tree and down. So it's dormant, but it's in the tree. So the tree is still alive. But as Tami said, to our eyes, we're looking at this dead tree thinking, ugh. But actually there's a richness within the tree that's waiting. It's these people that come into, according to Chinese medicine, their second spring. They come into their winter season with a wisdom, with turning over a new leaf, with a rebirth. And within this, they know that they are not 20. They recognize that they have to adapt and things are not the same. But there is a joy within the stillness. There is a confidence within the ability. And there's a peace and recognition that during winter, there is a time of storage. And I think what I love about the concept of storage is that there not only is a sense of containment, what have you been gathering? What are you holding? And being able to now live off of. But I always like to think of it this way, going back to your very, very first question that you had for me, Tami, is that there's an aspect to give. And those were the friends that I made in my 20s. I was with people who had stored cans of wisdom that were sharing it with a 20-year-old who was wanting and willing to listen, and their experiences, their wisdom was passed on to me, an open listener. And I think that that's what is so exciting, is that through experience, the highs and the lows, the rights and the wrongs, that is us learning. So when we come into our winter season, for all you listeners out there, we come into our second spring. And you can come into your second spring at 75. It's okay. There really is no age limit on that. I know I gave a timeline, but nothing is linear. Nothing is linear. So as we find this want, this will, and this shift, that's where we come internal. And we recognize that there is this rebirth within us. And I think that's so incredibly exciting. And there's even more and more research coming out about women post-menopause, how our brain actually changes. And there's this unique regrowth and restructuring of the brain that's really the wise woman that I find very exciting for all of us to recognize our second spring is just ahead of us.
That's right. That's right. I love that. I love that. You were talking about the tree storing its energy so that it can then do what it needs to do in spring. Made me think of Fat Bear Week in Alaska. If you're listening and you're not sure what I'm talking about, there's actually a contest in Alaska. You can vote for like your favorite fat bear. But that's what bears do, right? They eat and they eat and they eat and they store, and then they hibernate. And when we go into these winter seasons, having stored that, like you were talking about, whether we're talking about fibromyalgia, or we're talking about age, obviously we can get through the winter easier, right? Like the fattest bear is going to have the easiest time through hibernation.
Don't play grasshopper. Don't play grasshopper.
That's right.
And
That's
you're
right.
right. I think that's a good way of reminding everybody. It is easier. But I always want to remind those who do think, oh no, I'm in my winter season and I played grasshopper. We can fatten you up so fast. Don't you worry about it. The beauty of the brain is its number one job is survival. It wants you to do well. So as we change mindset, as we find different drills that can help us feel more confident in our bodies, what's so exciting is that the brain really does strive and want you to do well. It wants you to stay alive. So I think that's an exciting reminder, is that it's never too late. But I love how you phrase it. It is easier when you start earlier, but it's never too late for that second spring.
That's right. That's right. And thank you for pointing that out. Because if you're listening and thinking, oh, well, shoot, might as well stop the recording now because, it's too late for me. No, 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 no. It's
I've
not
got
too
these
late
two
for you.
40-year-olds telling me you better hurry up. Come on.
Oh my goodness. This is a great segue. One of the reasons I have always loved watching your videos is, yes, you've got the Chinese medicine movement in there, but you always tie in the neuro aspect of it. Like, here's what's going on in your brain. Here's what's going on in the nervous system. Here's, like your nerve glides. So let's talk about that connection a little bit.
So in the beginning, as Tami asked, I started in my movement training journey through Chinese medicine, which I'm very, very grateful for. Obviously, getting my certifications for more Western movement and senior movement, I obviously learned Western biology, anatomy, kinesiology, etc. But it was tied in with Chinese medicine. And I kept thinking, the Chinese medicine part is so in depth. I love that. So I would lean into that much more than the kinesiology or, the movement mechanics of it, because there was just a poetry and a flow within Chinese medicine, but there was a philosophy, just kind of like talking about second spring, talking about, to bend and not break. I mean, all of us, I think, can nod our heads, and there's so much common sense to it. But I also knew that the depth of Chinese medicine, it sounds, and pardon how I'm going to phrase this, but it sounds either too magical or too woo-woo for so many people. And though it makes sense, it didn't seem to be Western enough for someone so Western-minded to be able to lean in and view the Eastern science to be as valid as the Western science. And it was a couple of years later that I began studying applied neurology. So it basically translates as a way of using your brain towards getting out of pain, towards improving your behavioral patterns, towards shifting and making new habits, or wanting to get stronger. The root of it was understanding how much of neurology is exactly what Qigong, Tai Chi, and Chinese medicine movement is. It just all of a sudden gave me a place to go, oh my gosh, I can translate it now. Once I started learning more about the brain, I was able to see why we do the humming in Qigong, and humming helps center your body and be still. Well, it's a vagal nerve stem. So of course it's going to tap into what's going on with the nervous system. And we do these really weird little Qigong exercises where you follow your finger around, and it helps to reduce pain. Well, of course it does, because it's tapping into different pathways of the brain that actually has an analgesic property to calm the nervous system, to tap into the brainstem, and we don't have that threat response. So it was fun to be able to choose two sciences that are a dark black hole of knowledge to dive into: neurology and Chinese medicine. So as I've said, I'll never be able to stop studying this stuff. But it gave me a chance to be able to have people settle into Chinese medicine and translate the medicine from a more Western perspective. And it also was fun to rewrite everyone's language, recognizing that pain comes from the brain. The pain is actually an output. We think pain is coming from our finger, but unfortunately, it's not coming from your finger. It's coming into the brain as a signal of, uh-oh, you just smashed your finger on a hammer. And the brain translates this very quickly. Is this bad? Is it threatening? Am I bleeding? Is people watching me? Is this like going to be an intense sort of situation? Then the brain makes this decision, creates an output that we respond to. To be honest, it's still hard to wrap my own mindset around that because society doesn't talk that way. Doctors don't speak that way yet. And so society still has this detachment of how we function, how we work, and therefore it actually affects how we are continuing to experience pain. And as you and I continue on the conversation, and I just cannot reiterate this enough, that if you're not dealing with your own internal self, your demeanor, the totality of your experiences that make you who you are is translated as your shun in Chinese medicine. You and I would call like, oh, he's got a pretty bright, light about him, or he's pretty, lighthearted, or he's got a good heart. Kind of explain it that way. In Chinese medicine, the shun is housed in the heart. And how we see ourselves and how the world sees us is really going to literally shape your brain. And if you are in pain all the time, we have to tap into the heart of the matter. And I know that sounds rather silly, but all of us either know someone like this, have dealt with someone like this, or you might think, oh no, this kind of is me. That if we are one stubborn little stinker, if we're not wanting to bend, if we don't want to change how and who we are and the world can just deal with it, it actually doesn't help you become more resilient. It actually can increase threat. And so pain is going to be more present. And it's really can behoove us to work on that mindset shift, that heart and how and who we are. And it actually changes how the brain functions. It actually makes us nicer, sure, but it makes us kinder to ourselves, and that reduces threat on the brain. And when the brain does not have a lot of incoming threat, that's where we can deal with reducing pain. And I find that to be so incredibly important. And it's a good reminder for every single one of us to do a little bit of that self-work.
Yes, 100%. I think the danger when we talk about things like this is people thinking we're saying that your fibromyalgia is all in your head or your pain is all in your head. It's like, no, we don't mean it like that, but it is. Like the simple way to explain this is if you had no head, you wouldn't experience much of anything. But just from a biological standpoint, that's where the pain processing happens. Our experience is because our brain is processing it. So, yes, it is very important to look at all the pieces. I talk about the three-legged stool where there really are things going wrong in your body that we have to fix with fibromyalgia. So, we've got to look at that physical piece. There's lifestyle stuff, right? Like learning how to use your spoons wisely, going to bed on time, changing your diet, those kinds of things. But the third leg of the stool is this mindset piece, how we think about ourselves, how we think about our bodies, how we think about our illness, how we approach that, the resiliency we've been talking about. And you really do need all three pieces of that three-legged stool.
I think that if everybody can, maybe you haven't had this experience, but I'm sure the majority of us have, is when we talk about pain, there's this threat kind of brain matrix that we have, and it can be easily translated as to a threat bucket. So I want everyone to picture a bucket in their mind, and we can handle quite a bit. I mean, whether it is you're driving right now, so that's a lot of stimulus on the eyes as you're, driving through traffic and looking around. Perhaps it is the sweater or jacket you're wearing. Maybe it's a little on the tight side. So that fills up the bucket a little bit. But let's also start adding in that you haven't been having that great of a day. It's been very busy. And so you've been rushing around. You haven't gotten to eat. You haven't drank really any water. And then you're now pressed for time. And so everything's starting to get a little more bottled up. And now we're starting to fill up that bucket. You're hungry, you're tired, you still have more stuff to do, you're against the clock. And recognizing, and instead of using pain as an output, which it is an output, but let's just use attitude because that's also an output. So you're already with a full bucket driving your car and someone comes in front of you and they're going 5 miles underneath the speed limit. You got to make this light because you know this intersection takes 5 minutes for you to go again. And so you load on your horn and they make the light, you don't, and now you're mad. This has just ruined everything. The bucket is full and it is spilling over. This is the concept that I like to remind people of, is that we have to drain this bucket because right now you're mad. So you could start coming into some breathing exercises. Literally just take a big breath in and an audible, loud breath out. You may do a little bit of self-talk. All right. The gal was clearly not paying attention. She didn't do anything against me. It's fine. I am now officially 5 minutes late, but honestly, I didn't get ticketed. I didn't get hit by a car. Like, I'm okay. I'm at the light. I will go when the light says green. And then you feel your shoulders up by your ears and you realize you've been clenching your jaw this whole time and you think, oh my gosh, like, let me relax my jaw. And as you soften your shoulders down, your eyes gaze downward and you realize, oh my gosh, there's a little packet of crackers left over. I forgot about those. And you lean down, you just nibble on some crackers like a tiny little squirrel. All of a sudden your body comes down and you feel this calm. This is you draining that bucket. And so as the light turns green, you might even let the next person go ahead of you because you're no longer under threat. You're calm. You're a civil human being again. That same concept comes with pain. And I know we won't translate that until we realize that when that threat bucket gets filled up and you're experiencing pain and your jaw is tight, you're not eating, you're doomsdaying everything, and you're not calming yourself down, pain won't be able to go away because the bucket is full. The output is overflowing. So it's those similar concepts, just like Tami said, going through those main pillars of what is it that I need to adapt? What do I need to approach? And again, we're going all the way back to our conversation of that is neural resiliency. I am learning how to bounce back from stress or adversity while able to conserve my psychophysiological resources. That's what resiliency is. That is that independence that we all long for so that we don't have to make a panic phone call to Tami or call our doctor because, well, our drugs aren't working the way that they should be working, or blaming ourselves or someone else. Go back to those pillars and use that as a checklist. With Bamboo Bodies, we've got an extensive checklist because we do talk about the tongue, we talk about the eyes, the inner ear, mobility, breathing, all the way down to sleep and lifestyle. But I think it's as simple as when you tune into yourself and really think, what really fills my bucket up pretty quick? Is it being hungry? Because it is mine. Is it being really, really tired? That one's mine. Is it not having done any exercise at all? Like you haven't done a walk, you haven't done just something for yourself to find that recovery and that relaxation. Find your pillars so when that bucket does fill up, you can at least lean on those first and realize where and how can I drain the bucket? And it comes back to coming into the yin, finding that stillness. Then you're able to take shape so you can go again.
That's so funny as you were talking about that. I'm like, one of my things that I have to, like, if I notice my bucket being full, then one of the things I have to do to help empty that bucket is look at my calendar and see how full it is, because I need empty space. I need empty space on my counters, right? I'll look around my house and say, okay, are things piling up, right? Even just papers on the counter or whatever. Like, I need that empty space. Then you said what you said about the yin, right? It's like, yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly what that is. And the more we talk, Angie, the more I know we're twins, because I will link in today's show notes. There's an episode about the bucket theory where I talk about this same exact concept in terms of your fibromyalgia flares. So you can handle a certain amount, and when your bucket gets full, that's when you have a flare, right? Same exact thing Angie's talking about. But if you want to dive deeper into that, I'll link that in today's show notes, and you can read
Love
more.
that. Which I guess it just shows that Tami and I know what we're talking about. We're
That's
not just
right.
making this stuff up.
Right, exactly. Oh my goodness. So let's move into some practical things. So this has all been great education, great for our brains, new thoughts, new ideas. But how do we start to put some of this stuff into practice? So tell us what you do with your clients, maybe even some little exercises people can do.
I was actually teaching bamboo bodies this morning, and I made a comment to my class where if anyone comes to work with me one on one, whether it's trying to create a better lifestyle so they feel healthy, maybe it is trying to better understand how to get out of pain because they've tried X, Y, and Z and it's, just not hitting. So I like to start from the ground up. And getting reconnected with our feet is really incredible. There's, thank goodness, so much stuff finally hitting about the feet. There's still a lot of people that are missing the point of the feet. Something that you could do for the self is, as long as it is pain-free and it is comfortable, getting those shoes off, getting those socks off. And right now, while we're filming, it's summertime. And if you're in a space where, again, it's comfortable and it's safe and it's pain-free, that you can get outside barefoot, there's so much science to recognize what can happen molecularly when we're outside barefoot. So talk about a way of being able to reduce that inflammation. If anybody who really likes to dive into it, you can look into grounding, literally grounding. You can also look up earthing, EAR, like the earth, earthing. There's a lot of science that recognizes it. And again, let's go back to my quick comment about Chinese medicine. A lot of people call Chinese medicine woo-woo because they did not know how to translate the Eastern science into Western science. Earthing can come across as rather woo-woo until we can start to truly translate the science into our more mainstream culture. It's getting there, but we have to understand, from my perspective of finding rhythms within nature, we have to then reconnect again within our own selves and within our environment. So being barefoot, anywhere from just 5 minutes to maybe 30 minutes, again within your allotted amount, and getting outside, I would say, pun intended, here we go, is your first step towards working towards the ability to reconnect, to ground, and to do something for yourself that does not take a lot of spoons. We'll carry off that metaphor. The second thing is, and again, we can all thank James Nestor for who wrote the book Breath, or Breathe, one of the two, is that coming into our lungs is a second very important concept. There is a foot and breathway connection, so it's kind of neat to recognize that what's going on with our feet and nervous system will correlate to our breath and vice versa. But also, when it comes to talking about the brain and understanding the brain, just to give one quick metaphor, have you ever been in your car and you're driving and you just passed the gas station on the highway and you're like, I'll be fine. And then you look down and realize, nope, the light is on, I am on empty, and I just passed a gas station about 30 miles back and I don't know when the next one is. The car conversation changes very differently between the two in the car when you're on empty. And I want you to recognize that happens the same neurologically, that oxygen is fuel for the brain, oxygen and glucose. And when we are low on how our brain is able to receive oxygen, the brain kind of freaks out a little bit. And so if we're wanting to be able to drain that threat bucket, breath training is very, very incredible. It can benefit us in not only calming ourselves down, but it actually can pick us back up as we're able to refuel our brain. One of the most simple things is breathing through your nose, if at all possible, and trying to eliminate mouth breathing. I want to step into this real quick because when we breathe through our nose, and if you say, well, I'm kind of stuffy, when you breathe through your nose, you increase nitric oxide in the sinuses. That can break up some of that mucus, so you might be able to breathe better due to nasal breathing, which seems counterintuitive because the congestion stopped you from nasal breathing. You want to make sure that you can breathe, but it's one step forward in the right direction if it is correct for you. Deviated symptom and something structural, that's different. But also, when we're breathing through our nose, we increase our carbon dioxide. This is like going on one of the little lazy rivers on the little tubes, and you've got oxygen hanging out on the lazy river. You got to get off and take the exit. Oxygen is very lazy. It just rides the hemoglobin, rides your red blood cell, and it's like, I don't want to get off. Carbon dioxide is the transfer molecule. It's the thing that's like, hey, oxygen, let's get into the tissues. That's what your brain is reading, the oxygen getting into the tissues. And thank you, carbon dioxide, for helping oxygen get off the lazy river and go to where it's supposed to go. So naturally, increased carbon dioxide through nasal breathing actually helps your oxygen intake into those tissues. So as simple as closing your mouth to breathe is a good reset. And for someone like Tami and I, who talk a lot because that's required of our job, her and I do very well with those spaces in between because Tami and I then get to be quiet, keep our mouths shut, and we can breathe, and it's our brain's way of being able to be refueled. So neurologically, it's a reset and a refueling, let alone emotionally and psychologically realizing I don't have that much on my plate. So it's kind of exciting to learn that those breaks and stillnesses in between could be done with silence, with stillness, that being quiet and breathing through your nose is in fact a form of not only recovery, but refueling. And I think the simpler we can get it is easier for all of us because you could do this while driving. You could do this, right now. And it doesn't have to be so complicated to take care of yourself.
Ah, that's right. That's so true. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. The simple things, right? The little things are sometimes the things that make the biggest difference.
100%.
Like being able to breathe. Breathing is important. Just saying.
Nice, yeah. It's complicated for a lot of people. I will say some people hate nasal breathing. And if you are having a really hard time nasal breathing, you can take a paper bag and you could hold a paper bag in front of your face and breathe within the paper bag. And anyone who's watched, say, a television show of the husband and his wife goes into labor and he passes out or he's hyperventilating and they give him a paper bag. The reason is so that carbon dioxide gets caught in that porous bag and they're rebreathing the carbon dioxide. So again, it's helping that molecule transfer, but that's why you give the hyperventilating guy the paper bag, is to catch the carbon dioxide. So if you are having a hard time with it, you'll look so cool by having a paper bag to your face and just breathing in, breathing out nice and slow. But it is a way of starting to retrain biochemically that shift.
So good. So good. So Angi, how do people find you?
You can find me at bamboobodies.com. You can find me on Instagram and YouTube as well. It's as simple as just looking up bamboo. You'll see some very excited blonde talking to you about age training or a weird brain tip tool exercise or Qigong. That's me. And I know Tami's got a couple links in the notes as I wanted to gift everybody with just some opportunities to be able to come into some very gentle movement that might work for you. And just as a quick parting verbal gift to everyone, I always tell my students of any season, of any ability, that not every movement is going to be right for you right now. That we don't want to look at the overall projection of exercise and movement, and you should do this and do that. Actually, everybody, not just you, the listener, but everybody, every brain has its threshold that it doesn't like to do squats. It doesn't like to do that type of weight training. It doesn't like stretching or a yoga or playing tennis. Like everybody is different. And it's not that you find something and you don't like it and you never do it again. It's off your list. But also recognizing, was I properly fueled? Was I ready mentally, emotionally for this? Or did I actually need to train my brain for that exercise and I need to do it slower or I need to do it with less time or less weight? So, not looking at movement as an enemy, but also recognizing not everything is right for you right now. And the way that I present bamboo bodies, and again, in the link, I do know that I have a warm up just for us to kind of get our body, our brain, our lymph, and our blood moving, that you can find something that I offer and think, that is wonderful. I want just that one tiny little piece. Because the way that I present movement is I present it like I am cooking for a room full of very picky eaters. I cannot make a meal and make everybody happy, but I make enough in my presentation of my meal for everyone to pick through and see what they want. So you can be a picky eater or a picky mover with me, and anything that I offer, if you think, now I like that, then pick that out and take it. And if there's something that you didn't like, as my mother would always say, is take one little bite, and if you don't like it, you just say, no, thank you, and you move on to the next. And that is so normal. I don't think we emphasize that when it comes towards exercise. We tell everybody all this is supposed to be good for you, but when it comes to nutrition, some people have sensitivities, allergies, and preferences, and we don't shame them for that. So for me and my love of movement, I want you to always be mindful. Not every exercise is going to be right for you right now, and that's you becoming more resilient, because you're not going to freak out about that one. That's okay. It's just not right for you right now, and that's how and who you are for today.
Yes, 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 yes. I think that was so freeing when I realized that, I should be doing the things that I like to do. It sounds so duh when I say it. That's not the way that we approach things like exercise, right? You're supposed to do what's good for you. No, you're supposed to do what you enjoy.
Depart Qigong, it's a form of movement. Tai Chi is a form of Qigong. If you really want to get down to it, yoga is a form of Qigong, because all Qigong really translates as is being able to kind of move that life force energy. And for many of us, translation, just move your body. And Gong, Qi Gong. Gong means to just play, to cultivate. And I think that's the part to remind ourselves. Everything's so serious. I mean, if you're going to go exercise, you literally have to put on fancy pants to go exercise. But I exercise in jeans. I'll exercise in a dress because my exercise isn't anything that doesn't give me joy. And so I find the joy in the movement, and that's what brings me back to whatever movement practice that I'm into for that season. Remember, we all have different seasons we're going through externally from one to the next every quarter. And then we're all within our own internal season. So to get to that second spring, know where you are, bend like bamboo, and find a way so that you can train to be resilient.
Yes, yes. Now, I highly recommend you check out Angie's stuff. Like I said earlier, I love your videos because I always learn so much and they're so fun. But for our listeners, I just want to let you know this is very fibro friendly too. So if you want to learn how to walk up the stairs easier, if you want to learn how to carry your groceries in from the car easier, if you want to learn how to get up off the floor or stand up even from a chair, if you want to learn how to do those real life things that will help you age better, be more physically independent, whatever your age is, and, be more functional as a fibro person, that's what Angie's got for you.
That I do. Thank you again so much, Tami. It's always, always so fun to chat with you and discover that you are sisters from another misters.
That's right. That's right. Thank you so much for being here, Angie. And for you listening, hang on. I'm going to give you a few more links and resources in just a sec. And that wraps up my conversation with Angi McClure, a neuro-based movement therapist specializing in age science. Now, there were several resources that we mentioned in our conversation today that I wanted to make sure that you have access to. You will find those linked at fibromyalgiapodcast.com/164. That's today's show notes page. You'll find all of the resources listed there, including links to Angi's website, her YouTube channel, and her Instagram. I'll be honest, she is one of my favorite accounts to follow on Instagram. I just love her little videos. They are such great little bites of information that apply to fibro brains and bodies. I get so much out of her videos. So make sure you follow her on Instagram if you're an Instagram person. And Angi has also given us access to her Bamboo Bodies Neuro Warm-Up and her morning routine. These are totally free for listeners, so go check those out. Again, the links are at fibromyalgiapodcast.com/164. We also mentioned several other episodes of this podcast that you can check out for deeper information on some of the topics we hit on today. First, we talked about embracing life's winter season, which is episode 128. In this episode, I go deeper into what Angi and I were sharing about embracing rest, embracing that winter season where it looks like things might be dead, but we're really storing up energy so that we can have our spring. Right? So go check that out. We also talked about what I call the bucket theory. You'll find a deeper discussion on that in episode 49, Understanding Your Capacity Using the Bucket Theory. This episode will give you a new way to think about your fibro flares and how you can avoid them. You'll find those links to the extra episodes in today's show notes at fibromyalgiapodcast.com/164. The last thing I wanted to mention is the spoon theory, written by Christine Miserandino. As Angi shared, this is one of the best ways that you can help people understand what life is like with a chronic illness that limits your energy. There's a whole story behind how the spoon theory came about, so I will put a link to that article in today's show notes. I highly recommend printing out Christine's article or sending the link to her article to the people that you want to understand you a bit better. Again, you'll find that information at fibromyalgiapodcast.com/164. And now I've got this week's listener shout out for you. Now, this comes from one of our coaches about one of our coaches. Now, you might think that as a coach, we have it all figured out. And that is unfortunately not true. We have a lot of things figured out, don't get me wrong. But sometimes you can't see your own stuff. And sometimes you still need somebody to come alongside you and show you what you can't see. In addition, all of our coaches have different life experience, different training, different other knowledge that can help us in the areas where we have less knowledge. So this comes from certified fibromyalgia coach Deb Thompson talking about certified fibromyalgia coach Mickey Beaton. Mickey is so wonderful, kind, patient, and helpful. I will be in touch with her soon for more help. I highly recommend her. Mickey has a way of opening herself up to other people in such a kind and gentle way. She has a wealth of personal experience and knowledge about fibromyalgia. These qualities underpin her compassionate approach to helping others to heal. Thank you so much for that, Deb. And thank you, Mickey, for all of your great work. I am so excited. Mickey has not been on the podcast before, but she is going to be coming up in another couple of episodes. Mickey will be joining me to talk about creating a self-care routine that actually fits into your life. So be sure and stay tuned for that. And as always, if you need help with your fibromyalgia, that's what we're here for. We would love to help you. You can always schedule a consultation. Deb, Mickey, these are two of the people you can schedule with. We've got coaches and students all over the world with lots of different experiences, life backgrounds, education, and price points. Obviously, a student costs a lot less than a fully certified coach. And we've got a full range of people out there who can help you. If you're interested in scheduling a consultation, there's no obligation other than showing up. Obviously, you're blocking out a spot on our calendar, so we want you to show up for that. But beyond that, there is no expectations. We just want you to show up and we can explore if working with a coach is going to be a good fit for you. If you want to check that out, you'll find that at findafibrocoach.com. We'll also have the link, of course, in today's show notes, fibromyalgiapodcast.com/164. And that wraps up another episode of the Fibromyalgia Podcast. I'm your coach, Tami Stacklehouse. For daily doses of hope, inspiration, and practical advice, come hang out with me on Facebook. Visit facebook.com/fibrocoach to find my personal coaching page and connect with me directly. To find the show notes, additional resources, or to schedule a consultation with me or one of my coaches, visit fibromyalgiapodcast.com.